Welcome to Twisted Truths, where betrayal meets brutal payback, and where the most unexpected twists expose what people are really capable of. This story isn't just shocking, it's personal. My name is Dorian Shaw, and for 15 years, I poured my life into Summit Page Media. I wasn't some pencil pusher chasing quarterly bonuses. I built the Midwest sales division from the ground up. From the day I stepped into our Indianapolis office with nothing but a phone book and a list of dead accounts, I hustled. I drove 70,000 miles a year, knocking on doors, shaking hands, learning the names of my clients' kids and dogs. I was old school, handwritten notes, firm handshakes, and relationships that didn't need software to manage. And it worked. By last year, my division was pulling in over 60% of the company's revenue. I didn't need flashy metrics or buzzwords. I just delivered. But that all changed when Marissa Quinn was hired as CEO. She came from some tech startup in San Francisco. All slideshows, jargon, and disruption. No publishing background. No understanding of how this industry breathes and bleeds trust. In every meeting, she talked about digital-first transformation, AI-enhanced pipelines, and automating relationship channels. I sat there, usually the oldest in the room, listening to these kids pitch strategy like they were selling social media ads. I kept my head down and let my numbers speak. Then came that Monday morning. Her assistant, a nervous kid named Eli, showed up at my office, eyes darting everywhere like a rabbit about to get hit. Ms. Quinn would like to see you in the executive conference room at 2. I was on a call, finalizing a $12 million 5-year contract with one of our biggest clients. I finished it, shook hands through the phone, then walked into the same room I'd helped design back when the company still cared about people. Marissa sat at the head of the table like she was queen of a dying kingdom. On her left was someone from HR I'd never seen before. On her right, Eli, looking like he wanted to disappear. "Dorian," she said, folding her hands like a therapist about to deliver bad news. "We're so grateful for everything you've done for Summit Page. But we're moving in a new direction. Your methods are no longer aligned with our vision." I didn't say a word. I just stared at her. She went on about digitally native leadership and scalability. But all I heard was, "You're too old. You don't fit the image I want." She never said the word age, but it was in every syllable she spoke. When she was done, I stood up, shook her hand, and said, "Thank you." Then I walked out. No scene. No outburst. Just quiet, boiling betrayal. I cleared my desk while my team was at lunch. No goodbyes. Just my nameplate, a photo of my wife and daughter, and a folder of handwritten thank you notes from clients. That's what I left with. 15 years reduced to a 15-minute meeting. But the real gut punch? She didn't even tell the clients. By the time I got to my car, I had 3 missed calls from Thomas Baird, the CEO of Baird Publishing, our largest client. When I finally answered, he didn't even greet me. "What the hell happened, Dorian?" he snapped. "Why am I hearing from some kid who calls himself an engagement lead? I've been doing business with you, not your damn CRM system." "They're restructuring," I said flatly. "New leadership wants a new direction." "Well," he said bitterly, "that's the dumbest direction I've ever seen." I stared out at the parking lot. The same one I used to pull into before dawn to get a head start. Now, it felt like enemy territory. I felt discarded. Used. I didn't tell my wife, Elena, right away. She was visiting our daughter in Columbus, and I didn't want to unload until I could think straight. I just sat in my home office, looking at the phone, as it lit up with message after message from furious clients. By nightfall, I had calls from 12 major accounts. They didn't want to talk to Summit Page. They wanted me. I had no job. No severance worth speaking of. And a thick non-compete clause that basically said I couldn't work in publishing for a year. They thought they'd silenced me. But they'd only just begun to wake me up. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise, like I had for the past 15 years, only there was nowhere to go. My routine was muscle memory: shower, shave, button-down shirt, strong coffee. But instead of heading into the office, I stood in my hallway like a stranger in my own life. I didn't know how to tell Elena. Didn't know how to explain that the job I'd built my identity around, the title I wore like armor, was gone. That I'd been dismissed like a relic from another era. She called from Columbus that afternoon. "How was work today?" I opened my mouth, and lied. It was fine. Quiet. I couldn't bring myself to tell her. Not yet. Not until I figured out how to fix it. I didn't want to hear the pity in her voice, or worse, the worry. Elena had always believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. The last thing I wanted was for her to think I was breaking. But I was. That night, I poured a double bourbon and sat in our backyard until the stars disappeared. And still, I couldn't sleep. Because in that silence, reality kept playing on repeat. You're outdated. Disposable. Irrelevant. Worse still, I couldn't fight back. The non-compete clause summit page buried in my exit paperwork was a chokehold. I wasn't allowed to contact any clients, competitors, or partners in the industry for a full 12 months. 12 months might as well have been a lifetime. It was designed to starve me out, professionally, financially, spiritually. I didn't want revenge. Not then. I just wanted my life back. But everywhere I turned, there were reminders of what I'd lost. Jacob, my assistant director, the kid I'd mentored like a son, had stopped calling. I'd trained him for years, groomed him to take over someday. Now, he'd been promoted into my seat without so much as a thank you. I knew it wasn't his fault. But the silence burned. One afternoon, I finally opened the severance email from HR. It was worse than I remembered. 6 months' pay. 90 days of health insurance. A non-disparagement clause. And that iron-tight non-compete. And you know what else? They included a clause forbidding me from using my professional relationships built during employment for any future competitive venture. They thought a paragraph of legal boilerplate could sever bonds I'd built over a decade. But I still didn't move. I didn't call the clients. Didn't answer the voicemails. Didn't even open my laptop. Because I was afraid. Afraid that if I tried, and failed, it would confirm what Marissa said in that boardroom. That I was obsolete. The worst part of betrayal isn't the pain. It's the doubt that follows. I started second-guessing everything. Should I have gone to those digital workshops? Should I have pretended to care about social media metrics? Should I have let the CRM team run the show, even if it felt like selling out? And then, just when I felt like a ghost in my own house, the universe sent me a jolt. I was sitting in the dark, nursing my third drink, when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Dorian. It's Eleanor Jenkins. Her voice was like sandpaper and sincerity all at once. CEO of Riverfront Press, another huge account I'd managed personally for 8 years. I just heard, she said softly. Is it true? I didn't have to ask what she meant. Yeah, I croaked. It's true. There was a long pause. Then she said words I didn't expect. When you're ready to talk about what's next, call me. We're not loyal to a company. We're loyal to you. I sat there frozen, phone still in my hand long after the call ended. And then it hit me. Maybe I wasn't obsolete. Maybe I was just free. The next morning, I finally told Elena. She didn't cry. Didn't panic. She just walked over, hugged me tight, and whispered. I never married a title. I married a man who builds things that matter. It broke me open. That afternoon, I called Benjamin Weiss, my old college friend turned corporate attorney. Ben, I said. I need you to look at a non-compete clause. They fired me, and now they're trying to bury me. He asked me to forward it right away. Let's see how watertight their trap really is. And while I waited for his reply, something deep inside me began to shift. The fear didn't vanish. But it started giving way to something else. Not rage. Not hope. Something colder. Sharper. Resolve. If Summit Page wanted war, they'd get it. But not on their terms. No noise. No direct attacks. Just something, smarter. I'd spent 15 years helping people publish stories. Now it was time to write my own. 3 days later, Ben called me back. Dorian, he said, his voice crackling through the speaker, you're not going to believe this. I leaned forward, heart racing. Talk to me. They messed up. Big time. He paused, like he wanted the words to sink in. That non-compete clause. It's garbage. Overreaching. Unenforceable in Indiana. I blinked. Wait, what? I thought it was airtight. That's what they want you to think, Ben said, his voice tight with restrained satisfaction. But listen to this, the clause prohibits you from working with anyone in publishing for 1 full year, not just direct competitors. That's too broad. The courts have already struck down similar language. Plus, they can't stop you from using general industry knowledge or relationships you formed on your own time. I stood up from my chair. My legs felt unsteady. So, what does that mean? It means, Ben said, you can start something. You just can't directly poach their clients. I laughed. For the first time in weeks, I laughed loud and hard. Ben, you beautiful bastard. I'm flattered, he said. But careful. Just because it's legally flimsy doesn't mean they won't sue you anyway. They've got deep pockets. You need to outsmart them, not challenge them head-on. That's when it hit me. Like lightning across a stormy sky. Don't poach the clients. Let the clients come to you. That night, I opened a new document and wrote 3 words at the top of the page. Walsh Publishing Collective. I wasn't going to build a company. I was going to build a network, a loose, collaborative coalition of independent publishers, united by shared resources, distribution strategies, and, most importantly, trust. No overhead. No middlemen. No CEOs with buzzwords and zero heart. Just people helping people. And guess who those people were? Every client Summit Page had ignored, abandoned, or offended in their crusade for digital dominance. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. I didn't cold call. I didn't pitch. I simply made myself available. I posted once on LinkedIn. Looking forward to the next chapter. Sometimes the best ideas don't come from the top, they come from the ones who've been in the trenches. Within hours, my inbox was on fire. Thomas Baird emailed me first. Are you consulting yet? Summit Page sent some intern to pitch our winter list. I need someone who understands publishing, not PowerPoint. Then came Eleanor Jenkins. Followed by the heads of Graybridge, Blue Leaf House, and Cobalt Imprint. Each message came with the same tone. If you're doing anything new, we want in. But I still didn't reach out. Not once. I was playing by the rules, but redefining the game. Then came the call that changed everything. I was sipping coffee at a quiet spot near Eagle Creek Park, one of the few places in town where I could think, when my old assistant Jacob called. His voice was tense. Panicked. Dorian, he said. Can we meet? Not at the office. Somewhere quiet. I knew that tone. That wasn't just guilt. That was fear. We met that evening at a corner table in a near-empty diner, booths cracked from time, fluorescent lights humming above us. He looked like hell. They're watching you, he said, voice low. Legal had a meeting yesterday. Veronica's freaking out. Why? Because clients are starting to walk, he said. And every one of them says the same thing, if Dorian's gone, we're gone too. I stayed silent. They promoted me into your seat, Jacob admitted, but I have zero authority. The digital team makes all the decisions now. They don't care about relationships. They want data, dashboards, and content funnels. 3 reps quit last week. 2 more are threatening to. He reached into his jacket and slid an envelope across the table. What's this? I asked. Updated contact list, he said. Personal emails. Cell numbers. No summit page filters. I didn't touch it. I can't use this, Jacob. I know, he said. That's why I'm leaving next week. When I do, I want to work with you. I looked at the envelope. Then at him. Jacob, I said. You don't owe me anything. I do, he said, eyes burning. You taught me what this industry is really about. And I sold you out. I didn't fight for you. I let the silence hang. You just did, I said. I left the envelope on the table. Untouched. But in that moment, I discovered something bigger than any document could offer. Summit Page was unraveling. The very machine that cast me out was now rusting from the inside. And all I had to do, was let it. But I didn't want to build a revenge empire. I wanted to build something true. A place where people like Jacob, like Thomas, like Eleanor, people who still cared about the heart of publishing, could thrive. And for that, I didn't need Summit Page's blessing. I just needed their mistake. They called me outdated. They didn't realize the future was built by people who never forgot the past. After that night at the diner, I felt something I hadn't in weeks, clarity. I wasn't going to chase Summit Page's clients. I wasn't going to play their game. No, this was going to be a slow burn. Surgical. Intentional. Clean. So I met with Ben again, this time in his office, downtown, over thick legal pads and black coffee. I want to create something that doesn't break the non-compete, I told him. No direct outreach, no recruiting. But if they come to me? That's fair game, right? Ben nodded. So long as you're not initiating contact or misusing proprietary information. The law's about intent and execution. Stay clean, and they've got no leg to stand on. Then let's get to work. We registered a new entity, Dorian Shaw and Associates, with a deliberately vague description, independent publishing consultation and relationship facilitation. No website. No press release. Just a quiet LLC with a sharp edge. Step 1, build the platform. I rented a modest office suite on the outskirts of Indianapolis, far from the glossy corporate towers Summit Page called home. It was small, but personal. I hired 2 people. 1, Maya, a recent college grad who ran circles around digital marketing and could speak fluent Gen Z without a hint of irony. 2, Walter Griggs, a 62-year-old former logistics director who had retired early but hated playing golf. He knew every freight distributor and print house in a 5-state radius. Together, we built the skeleton of the Walsh Publishing Collective, a cooperative network where small publishers could access pooled resources, shared market data, and distribution infrastructure without giving up their independence. Not a company. A movement. Step 2, let the dominoes fall. I didn't need to advertise. Word of mouth did the heavy lifting. Within 2 weeks of opening the office, Thomas Baird called me back. Summit Page pitched us a data-driven pipeline for next quarter's launch, he said, disgusted. I asked them one question, what's your plan for historical fiction? They blinked like I spoke Latin. Still want to consult, he asked. I've got something better, I replied. I told him about the collective. The vision. The rules. No exclusivity. No bureaucracy. Just collaboration. Thomas signed on that day, and with him, brought 2 more regional presses that trusted his lead. Then came Eleanor Jenkins, who not only joined but helped refine the entire model. She added a shared digital rights platform, something no independent publisher had ever managed on their own. Suddenly, the little guys had the same leverage as the big 5. And it was all legal. Because they came to me. Step 3, stay off their radar. I instructed Maya to keep our digital presence minimal, just enough to exist, but not enough to attract legal attention. Meanwhile, Walter handled back-end operations, making sure no paper trail led back to me directly. We weren't a threat, not yet. But I knew how corporations worked. I knew what scared them. They weren't afraid of competitors. They were afraid of loyalty shifting. And that shift was already happening. One afternoon in early fall, I got a call from Jacob. "They're unraveling," he said quietly. "Veronica is yelling in meetings. Legal is drafting cease and desists even though no one's doing anything illegal. And the board's getting restless." "How bad is it?" I asked. He paused. "Revenue dropped 30% last quarter. 5 clients have formally pulled contracts. More are threatening. And guess what?" he added, bitterness seeping in. "They're blaming me." I said nothing. He sighed. "I'm done. I want out. Is there room for me in whatever you're building?" "There's always room for people who still care," I said. "Swing by the office." He showed up the next day with his briefcase and resignation letter already typed. That was the moment I knew it wasn't revenge anymore. It was restoration. Summit Page had tried to erase everything I'd built. But brick by brick, I was rebuilding it, stronger, smarter, untouchable. I didn't need to destroy them. They were doing that all by themselves. All I had to do was give people an alternative. And the more people who joined the collective, the less power Summit Page had to hold anyone hostage with contracts or engagement strategies. By the end of the month, we had 10 founding members. And that's when the board finally woke up. An email arrived. From Patricia Harrington. Chairwoman, Summit Page Board of Directors. "Mr. Shaw, we'd like to discuss a possible return to the company in a senior leadership role. Please let us know your availability." I stared at the screen. It was happening. They were cracking. The same board that signed off on my removal, now wanted me back. But I wasn't the same man they fired. And this time, I had the leverage. I didn't reply to Patricia Harrington's email. Not right away. I let it sit. Unanswered. Unacknowledged. Because silence, when you've earned it, is more powerful than 1,000 words. Instead, I called Thomas Baird. "I've been offered a return," I told him. He paused. "Back to Summit Page. They want me above Veronica. Chief Revenue Officer. Full control. And I turned them down." "Good," he said. "Because the day you go back is the day we all walk." I smiled. I knew that. But it was nice to hear it said out loud. I wasn't the employee anymore. I was the alternative. Still, curiosity burned, so I agreed to meet with Harold Blake, the longest tenured board member, at his private club downtown. Dark wood. Old money. Quiet power. He poured 2 tumblers of scotch and slid one across the table. "Dorian," he said with the gravity of a priest. "We made a mistake." "No," I corrected. "You made a decision. You backed Veronica when it was easy. Now you're looking for a savior." He didn't flinch. He was old school. "She sold us a future. You were the past." I nodded. "And yet here we are. You sipping regret. Me sipping revenge." He tried to laugh, but it stuck in his throat. "What would it take to bring you back?" he asked. I leaned forward. "You don't understand, Harold. I'm already back. Just not where you expected me." He blinked. "You're serious about this collective thing?" I pulled out a sheet of paper and placed it between us. 23 publishers. 87% former Summit Page clients. $42 million in combined annual revenue. His eyes widened. "You can't be serious." "I'm not poaching, Harold. I'm just giving them what you stopped offering." He stared at the numbers. "This is war." I stood up. "No. This is consequence." The next day, the headlines dropped. Summit Page bleeds clients amidst leadership crisis, Publishing Weekly. Old school maverick returns with a new model that's disrupting the industry, NYT Business. The man they called obsolete just stole their future, Indie Herald. Maya had done her work well. Quiet PR pushes, client testimonials, buzz around the Walsh Collective's author-first model. It was all carefully orchestrated. And Summit Page? They were scrambling. Legal sent a cease and desist letter. Claimed I was violating my non-compete. Ben shredded it in a formal reply. "Your contract is void by state law," he wrote, "and my client has not once solicited your accounts. Your clients left you because you failed them." No response followed. But then, Jacob called. "Veronica's imploding," he said. "Board meeting yesterday was chaos. She blamed the drop on market turbulence. But everyone knows, she's lost the room." And then he added, "She knows you're the reason." I nodded slowly. She's not wrong. That same week, I hosted our first official consortium strategy summit. 15 publishers. Dozens of staff. Writers, editors, publicists, all of them exhausted by corporate red tape and hungry for something real. I didn't sit at the head of the table. I sat with them. "Welcome," I began. "You're not here to follow me. You're here to rebuild the soul of this industry. Together." We discussed author-first policies, collaborative marketing budgets, shared printing schedules, new translation pipelines, and co-branded digital platforms. Eleanor stood up and said something I'll never forget. "We don't need another publishing company. We need a publishing family." And in that moment, I realized. I hadn't just planned my revenge. I'd executed something better. Something that would outlive me. 3 days later, the call came. Veronica Quinn had resigned. Citing health concerns and creative differences, she vanished with a golden parachute and a mountain of blame trailing behind her. Summit Page's board sent me another message. "We'd like to revisit the conversation about a leadership position. Not under Veronica. A clean slate." I stared at it, then forwarded it to Maya with one word. "File." Then I turned off my phone, walked into our new offices, twice the size of the old one, and joined a meeting in progress. Jacob looked up and grinned. "Everything okay?" I nodded. "Everything's just beginning." By October, the Walsh Publishing Collective wasn't just a concept. It was a force. We had 28 publishers on board, spanning 7 states. We weren't competing with Summit Page, we were replacing them. But I stayed quiet. I didn't gloat. I didn't go public. Because I knew, the final blow wouldn't come from me. It would come from inside their own house. And then, it did. On a gray Thursday afternoon, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. "Is this Dorian Shaw?" "Yes. This is Patricia Harrington, from the Summit Page board." Her voice was thin. Controlled. Like she was trying to hold something fragile together. "We're waiving the non-compete," she said flatly. "Effective immediately." My silence must have unnerved her. "You're also about to receive a cease and desist letter," she continued. We believe your current activities interfere with client relationships. I haven't contacted a single Summit Page client, I replied calmly. They all came to me. There was a pause on her end. I could almost hear her swallow her pride. Would you be willing to join our board meeting this afternoon to share your perspective? I smiled. I'm in the middle of my own meeting, I said. With 15 publishers who've chosen something better. She was silent so long I thought the call had dropped. Then, quietly, I see. She hung up. That was the moment. Not when they fired me. Not when I built the collective. This was the real shift. They didn't just lose me, they lost the entire future. But the twist came later that week. Jacob called me with a whisper of a bombshell. Dorian, you need to hear this. Go ahead. They didn't just fire you for being traditional. That was a cover. What? Marissa, she was dismantling William Oakley's entire legacy. Every person loyal to him. Gone. You were the last one. They needed you out so she could bring in her own people. That stopped me cold. William Oakley had been the founder's son. The heart of the company. The man who hired me, who believed in real publishing when the world turned digital. He died of cancer last year. She used his death, I whispered. Yeah, Jacob said. And the board didn't find out until after the firings were already done. So that was it. I wasn't fired because I was old. I was fired because I was loyal. They didn't want me gone. They wanted William Oakley's vision buried. The revelation rewrote everything. It made the revenge even sweeter, but also, more tragic. William had fought to keep Summit Page human. Personal. Passionate. And the woman they chose to replace him, had tried to erase everything he built. But here's the twist. She failed. Because the people she cast aside, myself, Jacob, the clients, the regional imprints, they didn't just survive. They thrived. Together. Without needing a corporate engine to tell them what mattered. We remembered. And remembering was what turned us from victims into visionaries. That night, I visited William's grave. Just me, a bouquet of blue wildflowers, and the October wind. I stood in silence, then finally spoke. They tried to kill what you built. But they couldn't. Because you planted it in people, not in spreadsheets. I placed the flowers down gently. I didn't come back to fix Summit Page. I came back to finish what you started. Back at the office, I gathered the team, Maya, Walter, Jacob, and a few of our newest partners. We're expanding, I told them. National distribution. Regional author tours. Bilingual imprint launches. The works. Everyone stared in disbelief. How? Maya asked. We're already at capacity. I grinned. Because they just laid off their entire West Coast team. And guess who called me asking for jobs? 3 months after Summit Page fired me, I sat at the head of a long conference table, not at their boardroom, but in a renovated warehouse in Fountain Square, where exposed brick met bookshelves and the hum of creation never stopped. There were 40 publishers in our collective now. Some small. Some massive. Some that had walked away from Summit Page. Others who'd never felt seen by companies like it. We called it the Walsh Publishing Collective now, not a business, but a movement. One built not on competition, but cooperation. Not on disruption, but restoration. And we were thriving. We'd published 17 bestsellers, launched a shared digital rights platform, and hosted our first regional author tour in 6 cities. Every month, more independent imprints joined. Every month, Summit Page lost another. But I never reached out to them. Never gloated. Never hunted them down. They came to us, because here, they mattered. Then came the final call. A familiar number. A familiar voice. Harold Blake, Summit Page's longest-standing board member. Dorian, he began, sounding tired. We'd like to discuss the possibility of joining the collective. I let the silence stretch. We're not interested in acquisitions, I finally said. Not an acquisition, he clarified quickly. A partnership. Just a seat at the table. I almost laughed. Summit Page, once the ivory tower of corporate publishing, was now asking for a seat at the same table they once kicked me out of. I said I'd take it to the council. But we already knew the answer. When I told the council, it was Eleanor Jenkins who answered first. Letting them in would be like letting the flood back after we built the dam. The others nodded. Maybe they've changed, Maya offered, but we don't exist to save corporations. We exist to give power back to the people who never had it. I agreed. The council unanimously rejected the proposal. Summit Page would have to find another way to survive, without cannibalizing the ecosystem it once ignored. A week later, the headline dropped in Publishers Weekly. Summit Page posts record losses for third straight quarter, leadership shakeup rumored. I didn't smile. I didn't cheer. I just looked around at our open concept office, at Maya sketching social posts, at Jacob coordinating print schedules, at Walter showing a young intern how to manage distribution logistics. I'd been loyal. I'd been discarded. But I never stooped to vengeance. Because I didn't have to. Truth has a way of surfacing, especially when you stop fighting for a seat at their table and build your own. Later that day, a nervous young writer knocked on my office door. Mr. Shaw. Dorian, I corrected, smiling. She handed me a manuscript. I heard this is the place where stories actually get heard. I don't have an agent. Just this. I took the pages and nodded. That's all we need. She blinked, surprised. Really? I stood up and walked her to the editorial team's desk. Here, I said. Let's see what you've got. Because that's what publishing is supposed to be. Not gatekeeping. Not suits and jargon. Just stories. Real ones. I still think about Summit Page sometimes. About Marissa, the board, the way they never saw the storm they created. But I don't dwell on it. Because this story was never about revenge. It was about redemption. About remembering that being replaced doesn't mean you were wrong. Sometimes, it just means you were ahead of your time. In the end, truth has a way of surfacing, even if it comes twisted through pain and betrayal. As one wise voice once said, sometimes your greatest enemy was once your closest ally. If this story struck a chord with you, let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, share, and spread the word, because justice deserves to be heard.